Hey there. Today is a Mastering Your Inner Game episode. And before I go much further with these topics on mastering your inner game, I must introduce you to the scale of human consciousness that Dr. David R. Hawkins created over decades and a lifetime of consciousness research. This scale, known as the Map of Consciousness, was initially printed in his best-selling book, Power versus Force. Now, I want to just read a small excerpt from his bio that you can find on veritaspub.com so you can understand the level of excellence and mastery and genius that was a gift to all of us in the development of the Map of Consciousness by Dr. David Hawkins. So here's just an excerpt from his bio. Sir David R. Hawkins, MD, PhD, was a nationally renowned psychiatrist, physician, researcher, spiritual teacher, and lecturer. The uniqueness of his contribution to humanity comes from the advanced state of spiritual awareness known as enlightenment, self-realization, and unio mystica. Rarely, if ever, has this spiritual state occurred in the life of an accomplished scientist and physician. Therefore, Dr. Hawkins was uniquely qualified to present a spiritual path that is scientifically compelling to modern society. Now, if you don't really resonate with the word spiritual path, just consider it a life path, because in reality, everything is spiritual and all of creation is of the spiritual dimension. And today, I will share fascinating information from consciousness research and why it is significant for you to bring this into your awareness if you intend to master your inner game concerning your business, your marketing efforts, and your life. But before I do, my name is Liz Garcia. I am your happy, insightful, and perceptive host of AthenaArenaRadio.com. Welcome to episode 18 of the Athena Arena podcast, which is the content and digital marketing strategy academy for aspiring 6, 7, and 8-figure, what I call Wonder Woman brands, and mastering your inner game. And all you brilliant men out there, don't be fooled by the whole Wonder Woman thing. This is meant for you too. And today is one of my Mastering Your Inner Games episodes, as opposed to a digital marketing episode, which I like to alternate every other week. So just so you know, your business, marketing, and personal life are all connected to what's happening within you. And to truly master anything in your life with a little bit more ease and grace, you must become aware of what's happening within you and discover how to master your inner game. As a teacher of consciousness, this is my strong suit, and I hope to shift you in significant ways once you know where to look and how to do it. And today is no exception. So let's get started. How can you master your inner game without a proven roadmap? Significantly, the scientifically proven roadmap I'm sharing today is not based on opinion, judgment, or someone trying to sell you something that may not hold any truth or power. It's about science, scientifically proven ways. And I'm introducing you to a pioneering roadmap based on the scale of human consciousness and a map of spiritual progress. And I don't want you to start giving me the 1,000-mile stare when I say the word consciousness or spiritual progress, because I'm going to simplify it and put it into everyday terms so you can really understand what I'm trying to convey to you. And this is a foundational building blocks for all of my upcoming Mastering Your Inner Game episodes and ones in the past. And I really didn't set this foundation for you prior to this, and I feel like we need to hit on that before I go much further so you don't get lost in the sauce while I'm trying to teach you something powerful. So this roadmap is a proven energy scale for aligning with your ultimate human potential. And as an intuitive coach, consultant, empath, and teacher, I become aware that I read the energy of people and situations and always have kind of unknowingly. It wasn't until healers and other intuitive types would kind of point it out to me, like they say, Liz, you know how intuitive you are and how powerful you are and this, that, and the other thing. I'm like, okay, well, whatever. You don't know much about yourself if things are just innate. You just kind of go about your day and be who you are. But then when people start to point things out, you're like, oh, okay, maybe I should pay attention here and listen to what people are saying and maybe learn how to apply it to help myself and others. So I observe my own energies as well. I also observe that many of us have scattered energies. And society in general can pull us in so many, let's call it, energetic directions. Whether it's your kids, your family, your work, your friends that have, drama friends that are always in some sort of drama or victimhood situation. News stories for sure. Pandemics, politics, hobbies, passions, and loving relationships can all pull us in different directions. And the energies of all of those are different too. They're all different types of interactions and energies that are measurable. And as a consultant and marketing strategist for small businesses since 2009, I recognize this in most of my clients. They came to me with what I could only describe visually, like what I'm kind of seeing and sensing, is scattered energies, a lack of focus, and online overwhelm, meaning you can't keep up and need help knowing where to begin. This is kind of what I see when people come to me. So that's just one aspect in life where I see these scattered energies showing up. And the question is, how can we balance these out and operate from a solid foundation no matter what's going on around us, right? So enter the map of human consciousness, which is a scientifically proven scale that puts power and truth into context. It also puts falsehood, weakness, and self-destruction into context too. I mean, you can't have one. You can have one without the other, but you need to become aware of what the downside is. And if you're putting a significant amount of your attention on the downside of any aspect of your life, I'm here to help you understand why that's not a good idea and how to let go of that. Like change your mind, pivot, and let go of these lower vibrations that really don't serve you. They're self-sabotage and self-destruction. So there's this analogy I really like to use. This is like analogy for me, right? Before I became aware of the scale of human consciousness, I was kind of flailing around in some areas of my life like a willow tree in an irregularly blowing wind. So imagine a willow tree, okay, here comes a blustering wind, you're scattered, you're moving everywhere, and then it becomes silent. So it's kind of like a roller coaster of energies is what I was experiencing after some significantly traumatic events in my life. I was totally knocked off kilter. And we all have this going on to, a lesser extent in our lives, just from minor things that traumatize us or shock us or disappoint us or whatever it may be. It throws us off. And then when I became aware of the scale of human consciousness, I started to shore up my energy fields. Like, my analogy for this is like, okay, now I understand the map. I know the roadmap I need to take. I know where I need to focus my attentions. And I started to shore up my energy field like a 100-year-old redwood tree, like super strong, rooted firmly to earth. This is kind of the analogy I like to use when you start to understand consciousness and energy fields. Like impersonal attractor fields is what consciousness is. There's all these different fields that you can give your attention to or not, or just not give attention to anything and just fall prey to going with the flow of whatever's going on around you, as opposed to choosing higher consciousness and a better path. Like if you're unhappy with some situations, there's a way to resolve them without too much suffering. So when I came into the awareness of the map and scale of human consciousness, it recontextualized some really horrific things I've experienced in my life, which I'll talk about in just a minute. So trauma can really throw you off kilter, right? It screws with your energy field in a big way. And when you encounter something really horrific or traumatic, it doesn't matter what level it is. I mean, there's all levels of trauma. And it differs by how you perceive things. So once I understood what I was experiencing, I was able to recontextualize the events in my life and start to rebuild and repair from there. And this map was very helpful in doing that. And this map is incredibly helpful for every aspect of life, period, the end, right? So before I dive into this understanding consciousness, high energy attractor fields, sounds kind of like highfalutin, but we're going to try to, I'm definitely going to do my best to simplify it in other episodes. This one's going to be a little more kind of scientific understanding and data driven. Before I dive into it, I need to let you know that Dr. David R. Hawkins' Map of Consciousness is strictly copyright and use protected, which is a shame. But it's not for me to judge. The Dr. Hawkins' wife has shored up the use, the copyrights and use protection of all of his teachings, which just it doesn't make sense to me in consciousness to do that, but that's okay. So in the absence of this, because I used to talk about the map of consciousness, and then I had, legal stuff coming at me saying, you can't say that, you can't do this, you can't do that. I'm like, okay, guess I won't do that anymore. So in the absence of this, my associate at consciousnesscalibrations.com, who is also a beloved and advanced spiritual student of Dr. David R. Hawkins, created a different map called the Map of Spiritual Progress, which is based on Dr. Hawkins' map and teachings. And he provides all access to this. So I'm going to have to teach from this perspective, but I'm still going to recommend some of Dr. Hawkins' books to you so that you can have a map of, the original content is really best when you look at it from the original scientific research. And the book I like to recommend most, even though Power versus Force is his most popular one, it's really high-level science and understanding there, quantum physics, and I don't know what type of math is going on there, but he's a genius. It's quantum in nature. It's beyond most people's understanding. So another book was created called The Map of Consciousness Explained, which is it's still a challenge because it's of higher consciousness, but it's a little bit easier to kind of grasp. So I'm going to link the Map of Spiritual Progress below in the show notes so you can go take a look at it. Today, in an effort, I want to keep it short and sweet and just pique your interest about the topic. And I want to talk about the scale just in general. And then in upcoming episodes, we're going to go a little deeper into the higher levels and then the lower levels. I thought I was going to do the higher ones today, but there's too much to cover. And I want to just help you just digest what I'm saying today and get you interested. The scale is a scale of 0 to 1,000. Where anything that calibrates at 200 or above is of higher consciousness. And I've mentioned these numbers in other podcasts. And certainly 2 weeks ago when I did the power tools, I did some power tools that mentioned the numbers. So anything above 200 is of higher consciousness. It's upward pulling, positively oriented, constructive, and holds what Dr. Hawkins would call truth and power. And that's a whole other topic, but there's truth and power in anything that calibrates above 200. And just so you know, anything that ever existed and exists can be calibrated as to its level of consciousness, including you and I. We are all emitting an energy frequency in consciousness, and it can be measured. And I love the example of, you can see it in people, like Debbie Downer. She's like a gray cloud. She's operating from a low vibration, and you can see it, versus Susie Sunshine, who's upbeat, positively oriented. She's not a naysayer. Everything is optimistic and loving. So that's just a simple way to give you an example of how consciousness and energies, if you can see that there's a difference. And I'm telling you, there's a way that it has been measured for decades through Dr. Hawkins' research, which I'm not going to go into that right now either, but it's high level technique to measure the consciousness. Now, if you intend for a happy, healthy, loving, and prosperous life, this is where you want to pivot your focus and attention. You want to become aware of, like, okay, if I want to have all of this, I got to give my attention to higher levels of consciousness. You can't keep looking back and getting sucked into the lower mind and the ego. That the juice of the ego is what Dr. Hawkins calls it. The juice of the ego loves negativity, loves to be pulled into the misery and the fray, but it doesn't help you to get where you want to go. It's not on the map. It's going in the opposite direction of where you want to go. Now, anything that calibrates below 200 is of lower consciousness. It's not considered false, which is a little bit confusing, and I'm not going to go into this today, but it holds no truth or power, essentially. There's no power or truth in the lower levels of consciousness. There's no energy there, and it's downward pulling, negatively oriented, and destructive. And it's like there's no surprise what lower levels of consciousness are. Anger, fear, loss, shame, guilt, desire, pride. All right, those are the lower ones. It's no surprise that that's what lower consciousness is. But it may be a surprise by the magnitude of how low they can bring you and how destructive they are to give too much of your attention to that. Now, this is not to blame and shame yourself for feeling lower consciousness whatsoever. We have our emotions. We need to feel them. We need to express them. There's just a way to go about it so that you don't stay stuck in those. You don't stay stuck in anger and fear and doubt and all this low stuff, that perfectionism, another example of low vibe stuff. You also need to become aware that this scale is logarithmic, not simple math, right? It's a log. The map is a log 10. So I took logarithms in high school, I think. I learned them, and maybe every one of us came across logs in high school. So 10 on the map, as an example, is 10. Oh, sorry, let's do 200 on the map is 10 to the 200th power. And 1,000 on the map is 10 to the 1,000th power. So imagine the number 1 with 1,000 zeros after it versus the number 1 with 200 zeros after it. It's a huge difference. And the higher you go up on the scale, the more quantum in nature it becomes. Like I just said, like look at all the zeros in front of the 200, which is of higher consciousness. But when you get to 1,000, that power and truth, that's really spiritual truth at that level, is huge. So I want to put this map of spiritual progress into greater context with really interesting calibrations that come from consciousness research. According to consciousness research, 77% of the people on the planet calibrate below 200. And not too long ago, maybe within the past 3 to 5 years, the consciousness, 85% of the people on the planet calibrated below 200. So there's been a lift, a significant lift in the last few years, which is a good thing. But it could be a little discouraging to realize that we are a very primitive planet operating from lower consciousness predominantly. So that leaves 23% of the planet currently calibrated at 200 above. So that's the upside, but it's a low percentage of the planet. Another upside is that approximately 50% of the United States calibrates above 200. So that's, to understand that we're the most powerful planet on the earth from the viewpoint of consciousness, it's understandable why we're so powerful. The consciousness of our people is predominantly of higher, it's higher consciousness, whereas in other countries, the consciousness is lower. So the United States and Australia and Canada all are in about the 400s on the map of consciousness, though in the past few years, all countries on the planet have taken a dive in consciousness ever since this pandemic and the politicalization of this and everything else and fear and doubt and all that low vibe stuff brings us all down, which is not an invitation for you to feel like a victim or be fearful. I don't want you to be that way. Let that go, because there's no power and truth in it. And that's, again, a whole other story, how it holds no truth, but it doesn't. Here's another interesting calibration. 50% of the U.S. calibrates above 200, yay, but only 4% of the planet calibrates at 500 and above. So I want to put this whole map, if you want to be of higher consciousness, anything above 200 is fantastic. And just because something is higher doesn't make it better. That's another understanding you need to come into this awareness. That at certain levels, anything above 200 is positively oriented and constructive. Nothing is better than anything else whatsoever in consciousness. It just isn't. And that would be that statement would be does calibrate as true. Nothing is better than another. Even lower consciousness. There's no judgment, because we don't understand the greater perspective from the spiritual domain. Okay. So, like I said, only 4% of the planet calibrates at 500 or above. Only 0.4% calibrates at 540 and above. And at last count, there's only been about 10 to 20 people on the planet over the past 50 years that have calibrated above 600. And anything from 600 to 1,000 are enlightened states of being and of the spiritual dimension. Super rare and a super radical pursuit if you're interested in enlightenment. Dr. Hawkins would attest to this, and so would I. These high states of consciousness are radical in nature and not of this world. I've experienced them. And just so you know, Jesus, Buddha, and Dr. Hawkins all calibrated at 1,000 on the map. And Dr. Hawkins never calibrated himself ever. He never even spoke of it, because when you understand what it's like, when you become awakened, spiritually aware of the truth of things above 600, there's no need, it's a non-issue. You wouldn't even consider it or discuss it, because you're in a different perspective entirely. One that most of us, only 20 of us in the last 50 years understand this, because although some have been in these high states like I have, there's plenty of people that have been in them but don't stay in them. So in any event, I have experienced over 23 quantum spiritual awakenings since 2003. And they're not of this world, and I've had them for most of them have been for extended periods of time, not fleeting moments, more like weeks to months, maybe 1 to 4 weeks at a time. And I didn't know what was going on. I knew I was having a quantum spiritual awakening, but I didn't understand how I could come into the awareness that I did. Super high states of consciousness where I'm in the presence of what I could only call God, divinity, love, extremely high, you can't even, profoundly beautiful awakenings. But I also experienced the swing of that, and I was swung into the confrontation with super lower states. And not maybe a few years ago, I've read enough of Dr. Hawkins' books. He's got over a dozen of them. Many of them are super advanced spiritual students, but I read them anyway because I understood that I was in advanced spiritual states, and I didn't understand how to deal with them or be with them and not confront the opposite of it at the same time. It was swings, like serious swings in consciousness, like the pendulum. You may have heard about this pendulum thing if you're a spiritual aspirant. So in any event, I had my associate at Consciousness Calibrations calibrate the range of consciousness I experienced just so I could put it into context for myself and share it with others. This is not like to toot my horn or do anything like that, because I don't recommend this to anybody, what I went through. Except for on the high side, I experienced the consciousness of the 700s, which is super rare. And I also confronted energies on the dark side of a negative 285 off of the map. It's not even on the map, it's off the map. Negative 285. Let me put this into context. Hitler was 40. So just, negative 85, Hitler would have been a walk in the park relative to what I've confronted energetically, just to put it into further context. So, this is not to paint me as a victim, and I certainly painted myself as a victim for long enough. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm just trying to save all of us from the significant suffering I went through. And you don't have to do that. You don't even have to suffer, period. And that's sort of my higher intent. It's like, let's end human suffering. What I went through is ludicrous and absurd. So, in any event, this is how I came to teach consciousness and incorporate it into my business and marketing training and podcasts. It's just a long way to come around and say, hey, this is why I'm sharing this with you. It's significant to understand this and to unravel your own consciousness so you can lead the life and the business and everything that you could hope for. And, operate at your highest human potential, whatever it is you came here to be and do and have. So, this is just a starter kit, so you understand where I'm coming from in sharing consciousness calibrations with you and why they're helpful in your business and marketing efforts as well as your life. So in my next Mastering Your Inner Game episode, I'm going to cover the higher levels of consciousness where you would best give your attention. This is where you want to give your attention, to the higher levels of consciousness. Where are they? How do I get there? How much power is there? How much truth is there? We're going to learn all of that. And then in the subsequent Mastering Your Inner Game episode, I'll cover the lower levels of consciousness where you need to understand how destructive and pernicious they really are in consciousness. So suppose you're struggling anywhere in your life. In that case, examining these lower levels and learning to let go of and release them can be significantly helpful to you, your business, and everyone you come into contact with. You're going to be a rippler out there in consciousness when you decide to let go of the lower, stay focused on the higher, and move through life with more ease and grace. So, just so you know, there is no judgment about where you're on the map. And you don't want to judge yourself either, because you likely don't know any better and don't understand what's going on in your own consciousness and how to resolve it. It's just an opportunity to develop understanding and awareness. That's what I'm here to help you do. Just start to develop, and you're going to start to shore up that energy field. You're going to start to really be more like that redwood oak, that redwood tree. Powerful, strong, rooted to earth, unshakable in the face of conflict and disrupting energies, right? And soon enough, you'll stop inviting them. More importantly, they won't even come into your awareness because you don't have it within you to attract it anymore, which is awesome. And I speak about this quite often and share other experiences I have on my other podcast called Your Weekly Dose of Higher Consciousness.com. You can find it there. If you want to dive deeper into these topics and more personal development, spiritual growth stuff, I spend a lot of time there. And then here I'm mixing it up. Sometimes I'll share the same content with both, but I like mixing it up because I want to stick to the business part of things and marketing, because that's what this podcast is for. But really, all of this stuff is related. It's all related. But you'll get a lot more of the consciousness stuff made simple over on Your Weekly Dose of Higher Consciousness podcast. So next week, I'm going to jump into another digital marketing topic. I'm still determining what that might be, but I promise it will be enlightening and helpful. I'll see you then.